Before we talk about electronic identity verification, we need to understand what it means to verify an identity. A person's identity becomes relevant in the context of a group. For the purposes of EV, identity is how each person is known to a group to which they belong, have belonged, or to which they wish to belong. A person's identity is not an abstract notion, but is a social construct that enables us to distinguish between different members of a social grouping. Identity verification involves establishing whether a person is entitled to be part of a group. For most groups, a person needs only to be identified once to the group. Most people in this audience represent organizations, and your organization has relationships with its customers, its employees, its shareholders, and its suppliers. Your organization defines different groups to which people may belong, defines the requirements for joining the group, and specifies the rules for how individuals are to identify themselves as a legitimate member of the group. Each person here is a current or past member of thousands of different groups. This is what we as a species do. We cluster together for purposes of sharing because we each draw strength from our interactions with each other. Most of our interactions with others require us to know with whom we are interacting, and for each group there is a process of identification. The number of groups we can join has exploded with the introduction of the internet. We now have a major problem of keeping track of all our memberships. My wallet contains 23 membership cards. My list of user codes and passwords contains 100 plus entries. Keeping track of all these different forms of identification is a major logistics task. Luckily, the internet, which has caused the explosion of groups, also gives us a way to control and organize our interactions. Issues of privacy arise when our activities as a member of one group become known to others both within the group and more particularly to others outside the group. This becomes an issue if our membership of one group means that our activities in all other groups is visible. So, privacy involves keeping our activities within groups hidden from the eyes of others who have no legitimate reason for knowing what it is we are doing elsewhere. My employer has the right to know that I'm ill and cannot come to work, but there is no need for them to know all the details of the illness or how I contracted it. It is this leakage of information between groups that is at the heart of privacy. There are various ways of tackling this problem. One way is not to store any historic information about transactions or interactions. For most interactions, this is appropriate, although in the electronic era, we tend to be storing more and more of our interactions for extended periods. We do something and it becomes a permanent record. Another way is to keep our interactions within tightly controlled silos, taking precautions to prevent leakage of information from one silo to another without our express permission. A third way is for us to know exactly what is held in all silos and to be kept informed of who has accessed any of the information and the reason for the access. To keep silos of information, it is necessary for individuals to agree to join each group and to prove who they are to the group. Identity EV is building enabling technologies for these and identification purposes. Our first product in identity verification is GreenID. GreenID is specifically designed to assist organizations comply with anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism obligations applicable to low-risk transactions. This demonstration shows how a customer verifies themselves with GreenID. This screen would typically be on a client's website, and this information would have been collected as part of the registration process. Once this is done, the user would be given a set of sources from which to choose. The user knows which organisations they have relationships with, and so they will choose the ones that suit them and with which they are comfortable. Let us assume that they have a Queensland driver's licence. They enter the driver's licence number, the other fields are already filled out, agree to the terms and conditions, and then they press Submit Details. Let us assume they do this for the Australian electoral roll and passport as well as the Queensland licence. They will then be verified. Some important points for this demonstration are: the organisation requesting identification sets the rules for identification, depending upon the risk associated with an incorrect identification. The individual provides information that is difficult for anyone else to know. If they provide false information, then they are almost certainly stealing someone else's identity rather than creating a new identity. Information that is needed for proving identity is discarded as soon as it is no longer needed, and it is only seen by the individual being identified. The approach complies with privacy guidelines because individuals have a choice in what they do, and any information not required is discarded in order to protect the integrity of silos of information. With Green ID, the individual has shown that they are known to other organisations and that they have a relationship with those organisations. This verifies their identity.